What is up? Hey, today I'm bringing you a breaking news announcement. It seems that since being stuck inside, there have been a whole new crop of fitness myths that have shown up online. I'll read those things that I crusade against on the daily, a whole new batch of them. All right, so today we are doing a special edition of mind-blowing fitness myths, at home, quarantine edition, whatever you want to call it. But if you are ready to save time, energy, money, frustration, emotion, then shoot me a thumbs up and buckle up. Myth number 1, if you stop lifting heavy, you're gonna lose all your gains. Wrong. Gains will mean different things to different people, but they typically describe the progress you've made in muscle strength and or size. Now, the fitness industry likes to focus on what you can do to build more muscle, gain more strength, do more. There isn't much talk about maintenance, which is a very important conversation right now, because this more is better mentality can create a lot of anxiety when you're off your usual routine. So the reality is, based on the current body of literature, good news, your muscle and strength are much more resilient than you'd think. In a 2011 study, they examined the effects of continuous versus interrupted resistance training on muscle size and strength. Over the course of 15 weeks, one group trained continuously, while the other group trained for 6 weeks on, 3 weeks off, then trained another 6 weeks until the end of the study. At the end of the study, both groups experienced similar improvements in muscle size and strength, suggesting, at least in the short term, taking a few weeks off won't cause you to lose all your progress. Now, the same researchers followed up in 2013 with a similar study, except this time they extended it to 24 weeks, where one group trained continuously, while the other trained for 6 weeks on, 3 weeks off, 6 on, 3 off, then finished with 6 weeks on. And again, they found that the overall improvements in muscle size and strength were similar between groups, suggesting that 3 weeks off really isn't an issue in the scheme of things. Research is limited on taking longer breaks than this, but I think it's important to keep the science in perspective. If 3 weeks isn't going to ruin you, then what's 4 weeks or 5 weeks or 6 weeks or more than that, right? Like, the mechanisms that regulate your muscle strength and size do not operate on a weekly calendar. You're not going to get to week 6 and all of a sudden, whoop! You know, she hasn't checked into the gym in a while. Maybe we should just offload this muscle. We don't really need it. We'll just release it into the atmosphere. Like, it doesn't work like that. Any change in your body is going to happen gradually. So you're not just going to wake up one day and lose all your progress. So my advice is, first, to stay active. If you are watching this video sitting down, let's stand it up. It's a quick video. Let's get standing. Even if you don't have access to your usual weights, things you normally load your muscles with, your body is a weight. By just standing up, you are putting a load on your muscles. Now, if you're watching this video, I'm going to guess that you typically use more weights than just your body weight. And in order to fully activate your muscles, you need to be lifting either a very challenging weight or training close to failure. This is more difficult to do when you don't have access to external resistance, but what you can do with bodyweight training are 2 main things. You can increase the technical difficulty of an exercise. So for example, instead of doing a regular bodyweight hip thrust, you could do a single leg bodyweight hip thrust, so more of your weight is being supported by one limb. Another technique you could use, and you could even combine this with the first, is instead of doing your traditional 10 to 12 reps per exercise, take that exercise to failure. So depending on your strength, depending on the exercise, this might be 20 reps, this might be 30 reps, it might be 40 reps, right? I would recommend trying one or both of those techniques. If you're going to take an exercise to failure, do it on last set, and you'll be providing a much more similar stimulus to as if you were training in the gym. Myth number 2, if you can't lift weights, you can't build muscle. Search calisthenics on YouTube. You know I had to explain it more than that, but basically, strength and muscle increase in response to doing more over time. The easiest way to do more over time is by lifting more weight. However, it is not the only way, and I think in times like these where you're out of your usual routine, it's important to broaden your definition to include other training techniques. So if you don't have access to more weight, some other things you can try are increasing range of motion, right? So the same force applied across a greater distance equals more work being done by your muscles. Boom, science. Another technique you can use is more awareness and control, aka better form. This can help ensure the right muscles are applying the force and that they're applying that force across the full range of motion rather than shifting the emphasis to other joints or muscles. Another thing you can try is more time under tension. You can achieve this by doing more range of motion or by slowing down the speed at which you're actually performing the exercise. Research has shown that slowing down the lowering or eccentric portion of the exercise has greater impacts on muscle growth as compared to slowing down the lifting or concentric portion of the exercise. Another way to progress would be to do more reps, specifically with the intent of training to failure, as research has shown that failure training recruits more of your muscle fibers. Lately, I've been following the Team Plan's home plan, using gallon jugs and cans for 4 full body workouts per week, focusing on a full range of motion, keeping my form tight, even though I'm lifting light, moving fast on the concentric and slow on the eccentric. Myth number 3. You need to use this time to diet. If you can't control your workouts, you can control your diet. While I get this line of thinking, I do understand it. I can see where the dots connect. I think that this can become very difficult very quickly because of how much stress is in this current situation. The reality is most diets should consist of some combination of protein, carbs, fats, and while technically a subsection of carbs, you should be eating your veggies as well. Of course, if you have been prescribed medically some diet that does not include one of these, stick to your medically prescribed diet. But if you've been struggling to stick with a diet that has you cutting out one of these food groups or restricting something that you really enjoy, the stress that you're feeling might be a good indicator that now is the time to stop. Around the start of quarantine, I remember reading an article on some of the unexpected side effects that this is having on people, and they especially highlighted the impacts that quarantine and staying at home is having on people who struggle with eating disorders. To be clear, I don't think that you need to be formally diagnosed with an eating disorder to struggle with food. I believe that all behaviors, those surrounding food included, exist on a spectrum. While eating disorders may be at the ends of the spectrum, this whole be better with your diet line of thinking probably lives somewhere in between. And my concern is that has the potential to escalate quickly when you're already in a stressful environment, especially if you have this added pressure of being perfect with some impossible diet. So if you are looking to chill out with your diet while still honoring your health, something I would highly recommend trying is stopping any strict diet rules, stopping calorie counting, and trying something lower stress, lower pressure, like portion control. This past year, I stopped calorie tracking after about 7 years of being meticulous with it. And while it was definitely an adjustment going from that to where I am now, I'd say a few things that really helped me were, first of all, having a plan. It's hard to go from having all this structure to having no structure. So it could be as simple as just saying, I'm going to eat 2 meals and 2 snacks about evenly spaced today. Like that's some structure. That's a starting point. Another thing that I found really helpful was to eat protein with each meal. Of course, as part of an overall balanced diet, you should be eating like carbs and fats and vegetables throughout the day as well. But by prioritizing protein with each meal, I find that it really helps me stay full and satisfied between meals. Of course, it supports muscle maintenance and muscle growth, as well as by just having kind of like a focal point for each meal, I found it easier to make other ingredient pairings and just build a balanced meal around it. And the other thing that's a little bit unexpected, maybe a little bit less conventional, is invest in plates and bowls that you love that are aligned with the portion sizes you want to eat. The research is not conclusive on how plate or bowl size actually affects your perceived fullness. Some research says that eating off a smaller plate makes you feel fuller sooner. Other research says it doesn't really matter. What I found helpful about it is it just helped me get into a routine of portioning my food and eating those same portions, that over time I became more confident eyeballing what a reasonable portion was. Myth number 4 is that you need to eat every couple hours to keep your metabolism revving. Now, before you go tell me, but girl, I already know this. Hold on a minute, because you might consciously know it, but your subconscious might be playing tricks on you, using that information against you. Okay, so just wait. We're going to get to it. The belief that eating more frequently burns more calories is rooted in fact, all right? When you eat, your body burns calories breaking down and digesting your food. This is called the thermic effect of food. And so the logic goes that the more often you eat, the more often you burn calories, the more your metabolism revs. This is where that line of thinking fails, though, as the thermic effect of food is directly proportional to the amount of food you eat and is thought to use 5 to 15% of the energy acquired from that food. So whether you eat 6 small meals or 3 big meals, if you're eating the same amount of food overall, that's 5 to 15% coming out of the same total. if you want to lose weight, you need to eat less overall. So it's in your best interest to get a handle on hunger. That's going to make all this easier. Now, unfortunately, the research is inconclusive on how meal frequency affects hunger. Some studies say that by eating more frequently, you should feel less hungry, whereas other studies say that meal frequency has no effect on hunger, and other studies even say that by eating more frequently, it will make you hungrier. So my take is that you have to do what works for you. If you are not used to being at home all day, if you've been struggling with snacking and you're trying to make a change for your health, or you're trying to stick to some sort of nutrition related goal, then this little tidbit of info can easily take you from eating every couple hours to snacking all day long. I know when I was struggling with weight loss, I would take any little bit of science or nutrition fact and use it to justify my not so healthy habits. So I would take this and be like, you know what? You should get that snack. You know what? Go back to the pantry. No, just move into the pantry, because that is going to keep your metabolism running all day long. I mean, we wish, right? We wish. I'd love to live in the pantry. This is really where I belong, but that is not the case. So the meal structure I follow now, and the structure I recommend in the team plans, is to have 2 big meals and 2 snacks about evenly spaced throughout the day. That way you get to have 2 big, satisfying, like real adult portion meals, 2 snacks to take the edge off of hunger. You're not constantly fixated on food because you're not having to stick to like some really strict every 2-hour schedule. You can just enjoy your day, then enjoy your food, and like life goes on. And myth number 5 is that you need to use this time to be super, super productive. Structure and control are things I've always turned to in times of stress, whether it's scheduling or goal setting or list making. Trying to be productive in any way helps me feel less helpless. I need to keep my brain busy or else I go dark. I don't know, right? But sometimes I take it too far. So when this whole quarantine started, my instinct was to do more. I started an online course. I set up a home workout space. I started baking more. I started running again. But of course, you can't keep just doing more forever. There's going to come a point where the stress or whatever you've been dealing with will start to bubble up, and trying to keep up with all these things will only add to that stress. And so you end up in a place where those activities you were doing to relieve your stress are creating stress, and you're in this really bad downward spiral. So, speaking from a fitness standpoint, I know the typical advice is to grind through and push harder, and there are a lot of people who are going to tell you to do that right now. However, there is a point where that line of thinking, that advice isn't really going to help you. It is very hard to stay disciplined when you know that your goal or that light at the end of the tunnel is 30, 60, 90, maybe more days down the road. And so if you're having trouble staying disciplined today, how are you going to stay disciplined times 30, times 60, times 90, times maybe even more, right? Like, sure, you can grind through and push harder, but at what cost? At what point does pushing harder begin to affect your happiness, begin to hurt you, which kind of defeats the purpose of getting fit in the first place, right? The truth is, you don't need to be more motivated or more disciplined or do more of anything. Doing less is actually going to help you win more long term. And I don't care what other people are saying. If it doesn't feel right, I don't think that you need to work harder right now. I think you should instead focus on working smarter. Take your goal, break it down to the smallest steps possible. Take those steps and turn them into daily actions, because when you do this, it makes your goal doable, easy even, because those daily actions with just a little effort turn into daily wins and repeated over time become habits. And those are habits that are going to keep this lifestyle going long term, whether you're motivated or not, like regardless of what the heck is going on in the world. All right. That is it for my rant. That is it for today. But I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it brought some clarity to your quarantine. If you enjoyed it, I'd really appreciate if you shot me a thumbs up. Otherwise, I can't wait to see you in the next one.